In the late 20th century, social movements focused on equal rights, especially women's rights. In 1967, Kathrine Switzer became the first woman to officially enter the Boston Marathon, which had been a male-only event for 70 years. Kathrine Switzer's 1967 marathon was a turning point for women's sports because it brought attention to the equal rights movement, created direct recognition for female runners, and eventually led to an increase in opportunities for women in all sports. The first feminist movement emerged in the early 1900s as a response to the need for gender equality and women's rights. Key issues included suffrage, reproductive rights, and workplace equality. Notable figures such as Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and Alice Paul led the movement through advocacy campaigns, protests, and rallies. Despite facing opposition, the movement laid the groundwork for progress in women's rights.
Women played a vital role during the Cold War, taking on various jobs such as nurses, pilots, and code breakers. With men fighting, women stepped up to fill the void, creating more job opportunities that persisted even after the war ended.
The second women's rights movement, also known as the second wave of feminism, was a social movement that took place in the United States during the 1960s and 70s. Women demanded equal rights, opportunities, and personal freedoms through large-scale protests and advocacy for just laws. Wilma Rudolph, despite having childhood polio, became the fastest woman in the world in the 1960s. She won 3 gold medals in a single Olympic game and set world records in the 200-meter dash. After retiring, she continued to make an impact in women's track and field as a national assistant director. The National Organization for Women, also known as NOW, was founded in 1966 by advocates to fight against sex discrimination. Betty Friedan played a major role in the organization. NOW aimed to bring women into full participation in American society. This idea continued to be important in the 1970s and 80s, especially with the emergence of new sports opportunities for women.
During the early 1900s, societal beliefs deeply frowned upon women's involvement in sports. It was widely believed that physical activity posed significant risks to women's health, particularly during the menstruation when they were considered to be periodically weakened. By the mid-20th century, this anxiety surrounding female exercise was already prevalent in American culture. Women were discouraged from excessive exercise due to the fear that it might dislodge their uterus and potentially jeopardize their ability to have children. Intense exercise was viewed as a potential threat to women's reproductive health and, as a result, their societal role. These beliefs served as significant barriers to women's participation in sports, reinforcing gender stereotypes and limiting their opportunities for physical activity and athletic achievement. Bobby Gibb was the first woman to complete the Boston Marathon in 1966, which was exclusively for men at the time. Her application was met with a rejection letter that stated, "Women are not physiologically able to run marathon distances. We can't take the medical liability." But she decided to run anyway, disguised in her brother's clothes. Gibb finished an impressive 3 hours, 21 minutes, and 40 seconds, though her achievement was not officially recognized. Nonetheless, her remarkable feat inspired Kathrine Switzer and many others.
Switzer was born in Hamburg, Germany, and throughout her youth, she was an active participant in field hockey, basketball, and running. While attending Lynchburg College in the 1960s, she competed in a few short-distance events that were available to women at the time. She later transferred to Syracuse as a 19-year-old journalism student, but there were no women's running teams available, so she trained with the men's cross-country team. During this time, Switzer became inspired to run the Boston Marathon after hearing her coach, Arnie Briggs, who had run 15 previous marathons, retell his experiences. Briggs initially opposed the idea, believing that women were too fragile to run such a distance, but Switzer persisted. Briggs then advised against Switzer running without registering, as she could face serious consequences with the Amateur Athletic Union. There was no rule in the marathon about gender, which further motivated Switzer to pursue her goal. Kathrine Switzer registered for the Boston Marathon as KV Switzer, and the officials thought she was male. Despite harsh weather, she proudly wore bib number 261 and ran.
When other runners would come by, they would say, "Oh, it's a girl!" And they were so excited. And Arnie was saying, "Yep, I've trained her."
However, around mile 4, the press truck following the runners noticed Kathrine's gender and slowed down to take photos.
On this truck was the race directors. One of them was a feisty character by the name of Jock Semple. He just stopped the bus, jumped off, and ran after me. Suddenly I turned and he just grabbed me and screamed at me, "Get the hell out of my race and give me those numbers." And then he started clawing at me, trying to rip my numbers off. And I was so surprised. And he had the fiercest face of any guy I'd ever seen, and out of control, really. I was terrified. And all of a sudden, my boyfriend, Big Tom, gave Jock the most incredible crossbody block and sent Jock flying. And all of this happened in front of the press truck.
As Simple attacked her, the press trucks caught the action and created a stirring image. She was determined to finish the marathon no matter what.
I said, I'm going to finish this race on my hands and my knees if I have to, because nobody believes that I can do this. And suddenly I realized, if I don't finish this race, then everybody's going to believe women can't do it and that they don't deserve to be here and that they're incapable. I've got to finish this race.
As the group drove back to their college, they stopped along the New York State Thruway. There, they saw a newspaper with their photos on it. This caused Kathrine Switzer to truly realize the significance of her running the marathon and the lasting impact those photos would have on women in sports.
Switzer was a pioneer in advancing women's opportunities in running. She believed that women deserved the chance to run the entire distance of a race, and through her perseverance, she achieved an impressive time of 2 hours and 51 minutes in the marathon. As the first woman to participate in many races, Switzer played a significant role in promoting new possibilities for women in the sport. During the years 1969 to 1971, Switzer played a leading role in the movement to gain official recognition for women in long-distance running. She made history by chairing a USA Track and Field long-distance running committee and proved that women were just as able as men when it came to running long distances, despite what medical professionals and studies had previously suggested. Her efforts paved the way for women to take on sports roles previously reserved for men.
One of its most notable outcomes was the creation of Title IX, established after Switzer's marathon, which outlawed sexual discrimination in educational programs that offered sports. It played an instrumental role in promoting gender equality and advancing women's rights in athletics. In 1971, the AAU allowed certain women to run the marathon with a 10-minute head start. However, the 6 Who Sat protest in 1972 led to the abandonment of this rule. The women sat on the starting line for 10 minutes to protest. In 1972, the New York Road Runners Club organized the first ever woman-only road race with 78 participants. It was a significant milestone in the history of women's sports and paved the way for greater gender equality. That same year, Nina Kosick became the first woman to win the Boston Marathon, making it another landmark achievement for women in sports.
In 1978, Greet Weitz broke the world record by finishing the Boston Marathon in 2 hours, 32 minutes, and 30 seconds. That year, Kathrine Switzer established the Avon running circuit, which helped pave the way for the inclusion of the women's marathon in the Olympics. It was added to the Los Angeles Olympics in 1984. In 1974, Billie Jean King founded the Women's Sports Foundation to promote women's involvement in sports and physical activity. Their mission is to empower women to achieve their full potential in both sports and life, offer financial support to talented athletes, and support research in the field. National Girls and Women's Sports Day was established in 1987 to celebrate female athletes, promote sports participation for women and girls, and support the ongoing fight for women's equality. It falls in the first week of February every year.
The impact of her race went beyond just running and marathons, as it also paved the way for female athletes in various sports. The Women's Tennis Association, or the WTA, now has members across 85 countries. The Women's National Basketball Association, or the WNBA, was established in 1996 with 12 teams and started playing in 1977. In 2012, the National Women's Soccer League, or the NWSL, was founded, offering a global league with teams organized by country. Kathrine Switzer's participation in the Boston Marathon marked a turning point in history that sparked a new wave of opportunities for women in sports. Her race became a symbol of the potential of women in sports, and her feminist activism helped pave the way for women's running. Additionally, she played a pivotal role in establishing a platform for women in the Olympic marathon and in her running club. Switzer's efforts also contributed to the creation of Title IX. The impact of her work can be seen through the increasing number of women participating in sports that were previously male-dominated. By demonstrating that women were just as capable as men in sports, Kathrine Switzer's Boston Marathon had a profound influence on the equal rights movement. Even today, it continues to shape society by opening up new opportunities for women in sports that were once inequitable.